Here's what we forgot to tell you. One of the things I've learned over my years is that smart people are a dime a dozen. They don't usually amount to much. What matters is a whole lot of other traits, and that's what we forgot to tell you. And so in the remaining 9 minutes I have allocated to me, I have been asked to tell you all of the things that we forgot to tell you when you were in high school. First of all, we told you you should be proud. You were told that this morning, no doubt, by your parents and guardians. You were told that throughout your whole life. You were told that when you got into Stuyvesant. You were told that when you won a participation trophy in 4th grade for playing soccer. What we forgot to tell you is it's not just about being proud. It'll be really helpful in life if you also know how to show a little humility. I walked around the grounds here today right before this, and I remembered that I came up here more than 50 years ago for the first time traveling out of the city of New Orleans. And this was the 1964 World's Fair. I got choked up remembering the places, but then choked up with a little bit of humility of all the advantages, all the good things I had had, the ability to be born in such a wonderful country or a wonderful city. And that gave me a sense of gratitude, but also a small sense of humility, knowing that whatever we accomplish, you and I and the rest of us, it's not just us. It's because of the advantages and the luck that we have had. When Benjamin Franklin was a young tradesman, just coming your age, he made a list of the virtues and values you needed to have to be a good citizen, to be successful. And if you've read his autobiography, you know that list. It's industry, honesty, frugality. But at one point, one of his friends said, you know, Franklin, you've left something off of your list. He said, what's that? And the friend said, humility. You might want to try that one for a change. Franklin, who I love, said that he was never very good at the virtue of humility. But he learned something almost as good, which is he said, I was good at the pretense of humility. I could fake it very well. So those of you from Stuyvesant, it may be more useful to know that even the pretense of humility can be very useful. It can teach you to listen to the person next to you, to try to find the common ground, and to have that sense of gratitude that we should all have. As you got older and closer to graduation, we told you you had to face reality. Here's what we forgot to tell you. The people who are really able to put a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs said, are those who have a reality distortion field. They not only face reality, but they know how to bend reality. Steve Jobs had that throughout his life. He learned from his guru in India how to stare at people without blinking. And so when something needed to be done and somebody told him it was impossible, he would say, don't be afraid, you can do it. He said it to his friend Wozniak when they were working the night shift at Atari, and they had to build a video game and do it in 3 days. And Woz told me that Steve just stared without blinking and said, don't be afraid, you can do it. And Woz got so inspired, he stayed up 3 nights and did the game Breakout. Likewise, when the original Mac was coming along, it took about 90 seconds to boot up. It was almost as bad as a Microsoft machine. And Jobs said to the team, you got to shave 20 seconds off the boot up time. When the engineer said, no, that you haven't looked at the code, that would be impossible, Steve stared and said, don't be afraid, you can do it. And even with the iPhone, 30 years after he did it to Wozniak, he wanted a smooth piece of glass, not junky plastic. And they told him they couldn't make a glass that strong that wouldn't scratch. And he told the Corning people, don't be afraid, you can do it. And that's why every piece of glass on every iPhone has been made in the United States by Corning because of his reality distortion field. So too have all the great innovators done that. Elon Musk certainly has the Steve Jobs reality distortion field. When he thought that he was going to go into building rockets and maybe go to Mars, everybody laughed, except his friends who made him sit down for an intervention. And they showed him a highlights reel, 5 minutes long, of rockets blowing up and getting destroyed, and told him he shouldn't do it. I thought he was crazy too. But now, even over the past few months, as we've seen the Falcon 9 and now the Super Heavy lift off, we know you need that reality distortion field to make it work. Jennifer Doudna, the hero of my latest book, the person who just won the Nobel Prize for figuring out how to edit human genes. When she was your age, she was in high school, and she read The Double Helix, a book by James Watson on the structure of DNA, and she was so fascinated that she decided she wanted to become a scientist. This would not happen at Stuyvesant, but what happened to her was her school guidance counselor said, no, girls don't do science. Well, that of course provoked her, and she's become the greatest life scientist of our generation because she was able to have a reality distortion field. Speaking of the sciences in a place like this, one of the things that happened that you probably did to yourselves is you self-sorted a bit as you went through school. You decided either that you were a science person or maybe a humanities person. You decided, that math and science was your specialty, or the arts and humanities were your specialty. What we forgot to tell you is that the most creative people are the ones who don't sort out like that. They're the ones that have a foot in both the humanities and in the sciences. Whenever Steve Jobs launched a product, the slide on the screen behind him at the very end of the product launch would be the intersection of two streets, the arts and technology. And he said, if you stand in that intersection, that's where creativity is going to occur. That's what Leonardo da Vinci was all about. I was asked by Hugo, why did I do Leonardo da Vinci? I did him because he was the person who was most able to combine the sciences and the humanities. He loved art and anatomy. He loved math and he loved music. He loved painting. He loved zoology. And that famous drawing of his, the Vitruvian Man, the naked guy doing jumping jacks in the circle and the square, that is a symbol of those who connect the sciences and the humanities, which gets you closer to the spiritual feeling of what it's like to be lost in this cosmos. The other thing you were told, probably starting at around age 10 or 11. I remember when I was walking around the World's Fair here, it happened to me. We were all in our wonder years, and everything was totally amazing. Not just the space needles and things like that, but even just the weird little things that you saw, not only at a World's Fair, but in everyday life. And you kept asking, why is it? Why is the sky blue? Why does the duck have webbed feet? And finally, grown-ups started telling you, quit asking so many stupid questions. And we kind of outgrow our wonder years. What we forgot to tell you is that curiosity is that most important of all traits. To be curious about everything, even everyday things and what happens, is the trait that connects everybody I've written about who ended up being an innovator or being creative. When I thought of looking at Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, I noticed in the margins a wonderful question, which is, why is the sky blue? And I remember when I was a kid wandering around thinking, why is the sky blue? And then I remembered that Einstein put it in his notebook, why is the sky blue? All of us walked into Arthur Ashe Stadium today and the sky was blue. But we probably have outgrown our wonder years and quit asking ourselves, why is it that way? Leonardo sprays water in the air and puts light through it, trying to figure it out. Einstein does diffraction, Lord Rayleigh's theory and formulas, trying to figure it out. We can all regain that childlike curiosity, and we can all dedicate ourselves throughout our lives to asking a lot of useless questions. Jennifer Doudna, the scientist in my book, did it when they were just asking a useless question, which is, why do bacteria have repeated sequences in their DNA that cluster? What are these CRISPRs? Well, that has taken us to the gene editing technology, and that has taken us to the messenger RNA vaccines. But curiosity is not just important because it might turn out to be useful. Curiosity is important just for the joy of finding things out. Even if the question doesn't turn out to be useless, always try to stay curious. Another thing you were taught, especially at Stuyvesant, was that you were in an exclusive place. You got chosen. And every step of the way, you got further and further up the ladder of exclusivity. You probably got into all sorts of colleges, many of which are very exclusive. What we forgot to tell you is that it's not about exclusivity. You will be judging, you will judge yourselves in the end by not by how many people you excluded, but how many people you included. It'll be the inclusivity. It's been a mark of Stuyvesant. You should look around you. You are in a very inclusive and diverse group. Throughout your life, you will be in less and less and fewer diverse and inclusive groups. Try to retain that desire to be inclusive in your life and to bring other people along. When I graduated from college, I don't remember much. I don't remember my graduation speaker. You won't remember me. But I do remember the minister at the Memorial Church of my college as we were walking out. And he said, what are you going to do? What do you want to be? And the people I was with were all very ambitious. They said they wanted to be successful. They told him they maybe wanted to run big organizations or be powerful. A couple of them even said, I think I might want to be president of the United States. And the Reverend Peter Gomes looked at them and said, here's what we forgot to tell you. We've got to tell you to aim higher. He said, this place has put out a lot of successful people, even some presidents of the United States. What we have to do is put out people who are also good. As Principal Hughes said to you, and those are the most important words you'll hear today, we have to put out people who are going to be kind. The world has a lot of powerful and successful people. It has not quite as many and not quite enough people who are just good and who are kind. And finally, you've always been told to follow your passion. Across this country this month, there are people like me, the baby boom generation, telling people like you to follow your passion. This is why my generation will never get to be called the greatest generation. Because you know what? It's not about your passion alone. It's not about the passions and silly passions you have. What it's all about is connecting your passion to something larger than yourselves. When I was with Steve Jobs near the end of his life, I asked him what he thought his legacy would be, what he thought it all meant. And he said to me that he had learned from his guru that life is like a river. And he said, if you're very successful and very powerful and very accomplished, you get to take things out of that river. And you judge yourself sometimes by how many products how many ideas, how many things, material objects you've been able to take out of the river. And he said, but now I've begun to realize it's not about how much you get to take out of the river. It's how much you get to put into the river. By his deathbed, downstairs in his home in Palo Alto, in a chest of drawers, he asked me near the end to open up one of the doors and pull something out. And it was a copy of the Whole Earth catalog, the last one. Y'all don't remember what the Whole Earth catalog was? It was like a Bible of our generation, my generation. It was called Tools for Living. And it was about everything that hippies and hackers and hobbyists and electronic geeks would want. And it was about the connection that we have to the planet upon which we live. Stuart Brand did it. It was called the Whole Earth Catalog because he convinced NASA to take a picture of the Earth from one of the early space flights. And the cover just said that beautiful blue ball picture of the Earth that is now so famous. But Steve asked me to turn it over to the back, to look at the back cover. And on the back cover, there was just a road, like the road you're about to embark on, the road you're about to go down. Sort of a lonely road, a winding road. You don't quite know where it leads. But all it said on the back cover was stay hungry, stay foolish. And that's something else we forgot to tell you when we told you to grow up. It's important to stay hungry and stay foolish. So I wish all of you Godspeed on that journey down the road. I wish all of you to stay hungry and to stay foolish and to stay curious. And above all, like Principal Yu said, be good, be kind. Thank you all very much.
Unfortunately, we all know how bad the coronavirus epidemic was in New York City. We all had to make it through a period that was far too dark and lasted far too long. Even when the first vaccines appeared, there was so much chaos and confusion, as well as so many competing sites, that it was almost impossible for a typical New Yorker to get a shot. And since at that time, it was mostly the elderly that were eligible, this misdesign was having serious health ramifications. Mr. Rogers famously said that during dark times, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. Our next speaker, Mr. Hugh Ma, was one of those helpers. With just a $50 website registration fee and a ton of programming skill, he pulled together TurboVax. TurboVax was a website that scraped data from the blizzard of city, state, and even federal vaccination sites and allowed people to schedule appointments with ease. It's estimated that more than at least 100,000 New Yorkers were able to get vaccinated thanks to TurboVax.